A very good evening, Mkhize. It's time for yet another informative episode. Soweto. Today I'm your host, Refilo Wahamudze. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Brand new year, 2018. Happy New Year and compliments of the new season. I hope you're having a blast so far. Now, speaking of New Year, we know that it's the beginning of the academic year in South Africa, 2018. Speaking of, the education department. Now, on the show this evening, we're touching particularly on higher education. We're talking free higher education, and just to find out, is it really feasible in the year 2018 academic year? Now, President Jacob Zuma, last year, December 16th, 2017, he announced that government will subsidize free education for poor and working class students. He said in a statement that the definition of poor and working class students will now refer to currently enrolled TVET Colleges or university students from South African households with a combined annual income of up to 350,000 Rand by, the 2018 academic year. Now, the Higher Education Minister would really revise this amount periodically in consultation, of course, with the Finance Minister. However, Higher Education and Training Minister Hlengiwe Mkhize actually addressed media sometime in the beginning of the year, to provide further details on President Jacob Zuma's historic announcement for free higher education and training for poor and working class families, as she termed it. Now, they were asked how the decision would be financed and why Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba wasn't present at the briefing. Now, Kuba Ngubane said Malusi Gigaba was one of the ministers who formed part of the IMC members who actually apologized for not being able to attend the briefing. Now, Minister Mkhize, on the other hand, said that there was a due process, really, in which Malusi Gigaba and his team were involved. Now, our news reporter, Sakile Stoll, actually was present at that particular media briefing. It happened in Pretoria, and he had gathered this information for us. Have a look. We'll be right back.
We have made an estimate based on the number of people who have applied and the percentage of those who will qualify from a NSFAS point of view.
Kusazoba umqansa okuhlinzeka kwabafundi ngemfundo yamahhala emanyuvesi akuleli. Lokho kuphinde kwaqinisekiswa umnyango wemfundo ephakeme nokuqeqesha namhlanje ePitoli.
I mean, this is modest because it doesn't take into consideration their realities. As we are sitting here, NSFAS hasn't got the realistic number of those who have got firm offers from universities.
Ngonyaka wedlule uMengameli uJacob Zuma wamemezela isinqumo esiwujuqu ngemfundo yamahhala ebilendelwe ngabovu. Kodwa ke lo mnyango uthi abafundi abazobonelelwa ngabafundi abazobe bequkethe imphumela ecolekile ngemuva kokubhalisa ezikhungweni ngokugcwele.
The items that we have put forward are already budgeted for, but the key message is that it was not enough and it was excluding other people.
Kuhulumeni lesi sinqumo esisindayo kanjalo nakubaholi ezikhundleni zamandla maqondana naleli khwela eyemfundo yamahhala ijogo elisindayo.
We get clearance from Treasury that, look, as long as you are within these parameters and not going beyond what our cabinet has already approved, we should be able to manage.
For the TVETs, that's going to be slightly different. We know that most of the time TVETs deal with a lot of walk-ins. Those that work in NSFAS will be on site to assist TVETs to deal with those sort of applications. But there is nothing that is going to be opened up from NSFAS for students to apply directly.
Ngenyanga kaNhlolanja kulonyaka kungahle kuqubuke imbhikisho ezobe iphikisana nalesi sinqumo esibuyisela emuva imizamo nezifutho zabafundi ekufuqeni imfundo yamahhala emanyuvesi akuleli.
Quite interesting. Thank you so much there to our news reporter, Sakile. Now, Minister Mkhize said that there was a due process in which Malusi Gigaba and his team were involved. Now, if the plan proceeds, it is likely to cause chaos throughout the state system as budgets are allocated according to programs. After the ad, we're going to be joined by a young gentleman, Mr. Mkhize Morris Masutha, who is one of the founders of Thusanani Foundation. They have really been in the struggle of higher education, of course, wanting government to give students higher education. They've been at it. He'll tell us more about that and about the foundation when we come back. Stay tuned. Well, welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Soweto today. We still discussing free higher education and is it feasible really in the 2018 academic year? Right now, one of the founders of Thusanani Foundation, which is an organization or an NGO, of course, working on addressing disparities in rural schools, graduated with a Master's of Science in Economic Geography at the University of Johannesburg. His name is Mkhize Morris Masutha. All right. Earlier last year, Mr. Masutha said free university education would come with an estimated cost of the state of between 6.5 billion to 7.5 billion rand. He proposed that government should foot the bill for education, for tuition fees in particular, accommodation, meals, transport, and all study material. Now, no poor or working class student must be partially funded, he wrote. Now, he's going to tell us more about that. He's here in studio. He is our guest this evening. We'll take time to speak to him. He'll tell us more. Mr. Mkhize, a very, very good evening. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How are you, Bob?
Solid.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a quick one, briefly about Thusanani Foundation. What is it all about?
So, Thusanani Foundation is a vehicle of a host of volunteers across institutions of higher learning who go to rural schools to bridge the educational information gap between rural youth and their urban counterparts, primarily to help them access and succeed in institutions of higher learning. So grade 9, from the selection of subjects that are in line with fields of study you want to enroll into, to career guidance and facilitation of access to institutions by helping you apply accurately and on time. And then prior to free higher education materializing in South Africa, we had to run around trying to look for bursaries on behalf of those learners as well. And then once they are on campus, we have a continuous on-campus support program, which is our program primarily aimed at reducing the dropout rate of rural and township youth when they access institutions of higher learning. So
you would say that the announcement, of course, by the president last year was actually victory for you guys? Well, it was victory from as far back as you could say 1652, 1976, 1994, and then of course now, because the struggle for free higher education predates my mom's birth. In other words, my mom found the Freedom Charter already calling for free higher education. So for us, it was a materialization of a historic call to the complete decommodification, decolonization of higher education as a strategic tool to not only reverse the impact of colonialism, not only to reverse years of apartheid, but to also advance South Africa and help its youth prepare for our future opportunities as well as challenges. So it was perfect timing for us. It was a long overdue, if you like. Yeah. When you say long overdue, I mean, you guys have been pushing, you've been proposing this for years. Tell us more. Yes, so I first heard of the word free higher education when I arrived at VETS about 10 years ago. Okay. Yeah? And it was at a political school on a Saturday of the Young Communist League and the South African Student Congress. And they defined free higher education as a higher education system whereby neither the end user nor his or her family is responsible for the financing of his or her studies, but rather the cost and the benefits of higher education becomes society's business. In other words, it becomes the responsibility of society to take its children to school. So, but of course, policy in South Africa takes time to materialize. So in our case, we felt that it was already taking too long. In fact, if you remember, in 2007, Pologwane, there was a policy resolution by the ANC that free higher education must be phased in for the poor and the working class. That didn't happen. In Mangaung in 2012, the same ANC now puts a timeline on itself. It says the ANC government, after winning election, must finalize the free higher education policy by 2013
and implement it by 2014. Government didn't do that. Fees must fall that started in 2015. So people who say, why such a rush? It can be a rush. It's been
way long.
Long overdue.
Yeah, but I mean, what persuaded you to come up with such a plan? You know, what's behind it?
Sure. So I wouldn't call it a plan per se, but recommendations on how to decommodify higher education, because a plan would encompass everything, right? But yes, you are still correct that we observed that the policy making cycle, or the space where policy is made, was left unattended by the youth and left to consultants. Now, consultants are a contradicted body of opinion. In other words, if you take 4 or 5 consulting firms from Centum and you ask them to produce a free higher education proposal, they will never ever produce real free higher education, because their initial clients, in this case the banks, are the primary beneficiaries of an education which is not free. So they give loans and they benefit from a commodification of higher education. So we felt that we could somehow disrupt that space and make sure that the students' view is not only heard through sloganeering during protests, but can also make sure that where the decisions are taken, the youth are also equally represented there. And I think that is what motivated us the most.
But the question is it feasible? You know, I mean, it's costly. It's going to cost a lot on government. Where is the money going to come from? Because that's the question in everybody's lips. Where is the money going to come from?
Sure. Well, where do we start? There are many places I could start in response to that question. But let's start by saying free higher education is very feasible. In fact, let's take a historical perspective first and then come straight to South Africa. Every other country that has free higher education, in particular Scandinavian countries and the Germans, have not only very strong economies, a large proportion of economically active populations, but importantly, they have very strong public purses. In other words, there is no antagonistic relationship between free education and the economy. But feasibility is not affordability. Many people are looking at, oh, what is our purse? And how much is it? Do we have enough in the purse? No. Free education can be looked at through narrow budgetary lens. It is a social investment with well-known financial, economic, and cultural returns. But let's bring it home. You've got a pot of money called Fiscus in South Africa, which is carrying what I call a social welfare monstrosity. The bulk of its population, that is South Africa, are dependent on social grants, free housing, and a whole lot of other social welfare issues that they need to survive. But if you look at the unemployment rate amongst the youth, it's 60%. If you look at the unemployment rate amongst graduates, it's 5%, which means there's a strong marriage between higher education and being economically active. Economically active citizens who get jobs are automatically disqualified from benefiting from social grants and housing. In other words, for every graduate you produce, you save in a lifetime of social grant for him and his children and the children of his children, because education facilitates an intergenerational transfer of advantage as well as wealth. But also for every graduate you produce, you save in a lifetime of free housing. People who would be economically active will no longer qualify to get a free house in the first place. So you look at it in context, free education actually brings money to South Africa, because many investors, before they invest in a country, they want to understand whether you have a skilled labor force. When you have a skilled labor force, it means it's cheaper to put a factory now and it's operational. And it means that free education will actually attract more money for the country and not the other way around.
Well, speaking of free education, which obviously you feel very strongly about, I wanted to touch on what it means for someone who has, acquired matric 5 years ago. What does it mean to, someone who's sitting at home with a matric certificate? Does it mean I can easily just walk into an university and say, I want free education? We know that Julius Malema was punting on that one as well. I want you to come back and clarify all of that for us and more, all right? We chat to him when we come back. We continue, of course, about the conversation here, free higher education. His name is Mr. Mkhize. We'll be right back. A warm welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Free higher education. Is it really feasible? Right now, 6 countries with virtually free college tuition. A staggering cost of higher education in the United States has really many prospective college students wondering whether going to college is worth the expense. While conventional wisdom still points to the benefits of having a college degree, more students and their families are really seeking alternatives to lower their college tuition bills. Now, some Americans are even looking abroad, as some countries really offer free tuition to international students and programs of, study entirely in English. Now, countries like Norway, Finland, we look at Sweden, Germany, Slovenia, France, just to mention a few. As long as you are proficient in Norwegian, you'll be actually welcome to study in one of the 4 Nordic nations offering free education to external students. If not, you'll be pleased to know that EU students are also entitled to free higher education. You won't even pay a penny for your studies, wherever you come from. Now, he's going to chat to us and give us his point of view on that. Mr. Mugobe, he's still here on the show, joining us, of course. Let's continue. Mr. Mugobe, welcome back. I mean, your view on that?
Well, that piece of information you are sharing is very important.
Yes.
Americans went with the commodification of higher education. That is the buying and selling of something which is a public good.
Yeah.
As a result of that, American young people currently owe the banks and the state close to 1.3 trillion US dollars. As a result, more and more young Americans are considering to go away, and they benefit from one secret. The American passport is one of the most powerful passports in the whole world, but also because America is a medium, uses English as a medium of instruction, it means they can go to Europe or any other part of Europe where English is being used to teach, and they can study for free in such countries which offer free education for both local and foreigners.
Yeah.
But the question would be, why would a country want to offer free education to people who don't even live in that country or come from that country? They understand that in a increasingly knowledge-based economy, by pulling from all parts of the world, you actually benefit. So for the small tuition that you will forego when you're funding a foreign student, the multiple cultural, economic, social, and even diplomatic benefits outweigh the amount of money they spend. So you see, those countries, they don't look at education as a cost. They look at it as an investment, period. And they have an overall broader perspective of how they will benefit. So countries that have commodified, like if Britain as an example, 2/3 of British graduates graduate with a debt of about £50,000. I'm currently studying there, and it's quite a problematic issue, because those 2/3 of those graduates are unable to pay back that loan even when they are given 30 years. They've got a 30-year repayment rule. But when the student fails to pay the banks, because that loan is guaranteed by the state, the debt is incurred by their government. So it's a problematic issue. It's something you cannot try in a country where only 6 million income taxpayers are carrying the rest of 55 million.
You mean a country like South Africa?
Like our country. So in our country, you cannot indebt the poor and expect them to somehow miraculously become socially mobile. You ought to uplift them in order to increase the size of your economy, and that way, in other words, you ought to redistribute to grow, and not to grow in order to redistribute, which is a myth that has led to the crisis that most Western countries are in at the moment, including the US and Great Britain.
Yeah, interesting. Let's look at the fees must fall. I mean, the protest in general was really operative move by the students.
Yes.
You would agree?
Fees must fall students will need to go down the books of history as a subcommittee of 1976. In other words, a generation that carried the 1976 protest to its logical conclusion. Those students deserve and must get all the credit for the work that has subsequently led to the phasing in of free higher education for 90% of South African households, over 90% of South African households. Because you see, sometimes elders move slow. So they need to be pushed over. If they can't jump, maybe push them over and they will jump into the right direction. So the fees must fall protest practically pushed an ANC government which had been rhetoricing around free higher education, despite it being its own policy. So it was a great moment, it was necessary, and I think that history will be very kind to every student who participated in those protests.
I'm sure then you are well aware of the findings of, Judge Hare's commission.
Yes.
Your view on that?
Well, there are a whole lot of progressive recommendations that came out of the Hare report, and there's one which is highly reactionary. So let's start with the good ones.
Yes.
Actually, 90% of them, you could say the first one was that government must increase its proportional expenditure of GDP on university subsidy from 0.68% to 1%.
Yeah.
That was revolutionary because university fees go up or went up so high in South Africa as a result of proportionally declining subsidy. So universities have two sources of money: subsidy from government and student fees.
Yeah.
The lower the subsidy, the higher student fees.
Yeah.
The higher the subsidy, the more you are now able to arrest the hiking of fees in South Africa. Another thing that the judge recommended, which was very progressive, was that infrastructure investment must prioritize historically black universities that are currently grossly under-resourced and as a result becoming some form of a second-hand system of higher education in one country. That was great. But the judge went further to say, in this day and age, the issue of whether there is space or not in university shouldn't be a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
Government must explore online and blended learning. Why can we not have cameras in all lecture theaters and stream live lectures to people's homes, as an example, and lower the cost dramatically?
Yeah.
Of course, those who benefit from the current configuration of universities will kick and scream, but we'll have to push them over as well, because those are some of the progressive recommendations that I believe the judge made, which worked very well.
Interesting. I just wanted to get your point of view on that one. Quick one. We are running out of time. I know that CEO of universities, SA, Ahmed Bawa, which represents, of course, the 23 public universities in South Africa, said that the announcement was a mixed bag, but overall positive. Would you agree with that?
Bawa is out of order. You see, he's very elitist in his approach.
Yeah.
He complained about the timing. Let's just unpack briefly the timing. Students protest in 2015. The president responds. They say, let's establish a commission of inquiry together with the vice chancellor.
Yes.
They go there and propose, no, give student loans, vice chancellors that is.
Yeah.
Give student loans, not free education. Others say, no, give student free education. The commission takes 2 years. The president received this report in August of 2017, takes 3 months and makes a determination. Why is he supposed to take 4 years of his 5-year term to respond to students? Then the very same Bawa was going to turn around and say, here is inactive leadership that is unable to provide leadership. So elitism must just be placed one side. Free higher education does not need the permission of a school principal or a university principal. It's a societal demand.
Now speak of the quickly as we close. Minister of Higher Education, Mkhize, is talking about 5 years. She says, no, it's not going to happen now. Free education is only going to be, we're going to get into it 5 years from now. Sure. What's your view on that?
Professor Mkhize is accurate. In fact, you could even say 6 years, not 5 years. Yeah. Because it's all dependent on the degree. If you're doing a 2-year diploma and this 2018 is your first year, free education for you will be phased in over 2 years. If you're doing a 3-year degree, 3 years, because remember, you funded this year, but you carry your grant with you until you complete, provided, of course, you meet you are passing, not if you're failing everything. Okay. So if you're doing a 6-year medical degree, free education for you will be phased in through 6 years. But existing students who are currently in their second, third, fourth, or fifth year, their NSFAS loans have been converted to 100% grant. In other words, they are experiencing free education retrospectively, which means if you are in your 3rd year and you are studying through NSFAS loans, your loans have been converted to grant, which means your free education started 3 years ago. So it's a very seamless process. There shouldn't be much confusion there.
There shouldn't, really. So there is hope for young people to study for free.
Definitely, but it needs one real action. Every, you could say, poor and working class black student in universities need to go back to their schools now and apply for at least 100 youth in their township or village right now online, so that when we cross over December, this opportunism of saying you did not apply must not apply in 2019. We must flood the enrollment system and make sure that we tutor townships every weekend to meet the entrance requirements, because what whites are going to do now, they're going to hike the entrance requirements at university. Like today, if you take my matric certificate, I don't qualify to enroll at VET, but I'm a VET graduate. It means each time we improve our matric results, they increase the entrance requirements. So we must now go back and tutor our guys to meet those requirements and surpass them. That is how you will ambush these ivory towers.
Phew, I would love to continue with this conversation, trust me, but we're out of time. I mean, for someone who's watching the show right now, whether it's a parent who has a child who wants to go to university, they want to get hold of the foundation. They want to get a review, they want more information on what you do as a foundation. Where do they get a review? Do you have a Twitter account, Facebook, website?
So the website would be tusananifoundation.org. Twitter, I believe, would be tusanani_RSA, and then just Tusanani Foundation on Facebook. And then my page is just Mukobe Masuta. So.
Mr. Masuta, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, and that's how we wrap up a conversation, always making sure not only in Soweto, but the rest of the country as well. Remember, we can keep this conversation going on our social media platforms. That's Facebook, Refilo Mose, Twitter, Refilo Mose numerical 1, Instagram, Refilo Mose. That's all we had for you this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And I must say, very first interesting episode for the year 2018. And of course, all the best to all the students for their 2018 academic year. It's a wrap from myself and the rest of the team. Good night, and remember to stay on Soweto TV.